The amount of money you have in your bank account is great, but the amount of money that you have in your bank account is only as important as whether or not you're making money every month or losing money every month.
If you take all Kevin's money right now, he's eventually going to have money again because he knows how to make money, and he knows how to minimize expenses, and he knows finance. Learning about money is going to make you more successful.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another episode of Next Level University, where we teach you how to level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode. It was episode number 1345. Direction is far more important than speed. Today, for episode number 1346, we will be talking about wealth, the two most important things when it comes to your money. Okay. My goal in this episode is to make something land that I think has been elusive for us in the past, at least elusive for us to get something to land. We've talked many times about how I got to the point in my life where I was making $14 an hour plus overtime. I had some overtime as well. And I went out and bought a $30,000 car. And we've tried to explain why that was not a great idea. And I think I'll be able to explain it better today than ever. The two most important things when it comes to your money, on the simplest level, two things: recurring income, recurring expenses. Okay. So the amount of money that is coming in on a recurring basis, the amount of money that is going out on a recurring basis. Let's just start there with the simplest form. Now, here's my question, and this is why this is a dangerous game. When I purchased that car, I had a 5-year car loan, 60 months. So I was responsible to pay that thing $400 a month every single month on the day for the next 60 months. A simple question that I should have asked myself that I didn't. What is more likely to change in the next 5 years? Really think about this. My recurring income or this recurring expense. So all I mean by that is this. I, for the next 5 years, am guaranteed to have to spend $400 a month on this car. If I want to make any shifts in the amount of money I make, say I want to take a job that I'm more passionate about that pays less, I kind of can't do it. If I do, I'm putting myself in a potentially negative situation. I think an important way to phrase, or I guess to look at this, is this. We now live in a culture and a society where almost everything is a subscription. Netflix is $15.49, I think, depending on what you have. Amazon Prime is a different thing. Disney Plus is a different thing. Every single one of those is pretty much like, hey, you can use this whenever you want. We just need $5 a month from you.
Love Disney Plus.
Disney Plus is clutch. Again, I know you're watching children's movies. Tara and I are watching The Punisher. Love it. Huge fan of The Punisher. We watch Daredevil.
There's some good stuff on Disney Plus too.
There is some good stuff on Disney Plus.
Just
but
saying.
Disney Plus, just like everything else, basically says if you would like to use it, you can use it as much as you want. But we are going to need $9.99 from you. And you say, cool, $9.99, not that big of a deal. You know, over the course of a year, that might be $120. That's worth it to me. It's worth it to me. But I think the issue that we have is a lot of the decisions we make, you can cancel Disney Plus whenever you want. You can cancel it tomorrow if you want. Right? You're not in a contract. You don't have to pay for a year or 5 years or 10 years or 20 years. We make a lot of our purchasing decisions from emotion when they have to be weighed against the logical side of things where I'm going to have to spend this money every single month for the next 5 years. What if my income changes? Because that expense is going to stay exactly the same. So when you're doing things, and again, I might be the most guilty of this of all time. So when I say this, I am not suggesting you are doing something worse than I have done in the past. When you make your purchases, are you saying to yourself, am I going to be able to sustain this for the next however long based on everything I'm doing today? Or are you saying, well, yeah, it's going to be okay. Like, I'm just going to do it and then I'll kind of figure it out as I go. Because as I go is a very, very dangerous game to play. We've talked about this many times. The average car payment in the US is like $700 a month, or what is it? $715 a month? $758. Many people are saying, well, yeah, I can afford that right now. Not, yes, I can afford that right now. And based on everything else, I expect that I'll be making more money. So the payments actually get easier as I go. Those are two different lives. Those are two very, very different lives. So again, the two things, recurring income, how much money are you making weekly, biweekly, monthly, yearly, versus your recurring expenses. How much money are you spending daily, weekly, monthly, yearly? For many of us, the expenses are going to change far faster than the income, especially if you're at a job where you only get a little raise, or maybe you're working on tips and some sort of payment. That you have to understand that for many of us, it's far easier to control, to influence our expenses. It's far easier to influence them than it is our income, because you can cancel stuff. You can go buy something that costs you $500 a month. That's really the goal in this episode, to talk about those two and how you can leverage that better.
So Kevin and I were talking earlier about some of him and Taryn's goals, and eventually they want to buy a home, and it's like, okay, this is how much you need. And, let's just assume 50-50 here for a minute. Okay, so you have 12 months and you want to save 15 grand each. And what that really broke down to is $125 per week. We broke this down per week, earning more, earn $125. I think it was 156. I think it was like 150. I think she had to earn $150 more per week.
I think it was
on
165.
Average.
165.
165? Okay.
I think so.
I honestly think 150, but either way.
We'll go with it.
I think it was 156, which is why I think you're thinking 165.
It's possible.
But I sent it to you in WhatsApp. If you do want to check, it's up to you.
Oh.
So earn $156 more per week for the next year, which is doable. I mean, that is doable. That's an additional, let's say you make $15 an hour. That's what? An additional, say again?
10 hours.
10 hours. Okay, that's an additional 10 hours. Now, you can Uber, you can blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of ways to do it, okay? It's not easy, but there's ways to do it. You can dog sit. There's all kinds of apps and different things. DoorDash, whatever. Okay, and simultaneously, find a way to spend $156 less per week. That's it. And if she does that, and I'm not saying that's going to be easy, okay? If she does that, she'll have $15,000 by the end of the year. $15,000 more, which is half of a down payment on a home for you two. Mm-hmm. Now, it really does come down to the numbers. I want to tell this story briefly. I had a client once. Wonderful human being, huge fan, absolute sweetheart, grinded her face off early and chasing her dreams, and she was working, doing really well. She was making, I want to say $30,000 a month at her peak. COVID happens. When COVID happens, so now, again, there's two focuses in this episode. Number one is how much you earn. Number two is how much you spend. Okay, so you said recurring income and recurring expenses, right? Okay, so her recurring income was $30,000 a month, which sounds like a lot of money, and it is. But here's the thing, though. She had 3 cars between her and her husband. Her husband got to be a stay-at-home dad. They had 4 children, and they have a huge home and large expenses. I know it seems like $30,000 a month is like a ton of money, but I know a lot of people who make that much money, they end up spending most of it, honestly. I had one client who makes $25,000 a month, and she spends $24.50, and so it's a whole thing. But anyways, here's what happens: COVID happens, the business starts to do worse. All of a sudden, her $30,000 per month is now $11,000, and she has to sell a car. Her husband had to go back to work, and again, that's life. Sometimes that happens. But the point that I want to make in this story is the income was not guaranteed. The expenses were.
Yes.
And yes, she can downsize, sell a car, potentially sell your home. Maybe you've heard of downsizing. And that's what happens, right? We all overextend, and then the economy crashes. We lose our job. Now we have to downsize. So you don't want to do that. But what I would say is the 2 most important things when it comes to money is how much is coming in and how much is going out. If you have more coming in than is going out, you're in the green. If you have more going out than is coming in, you're headed towards the red. And this connects very beautifully with our last episode. okay? It can feel like you're in the green when you get a new car, new home, new boat, new jet ski, new whatever, but yet you're actually headed red because you just incurred a bunch of, we'll use Kevin's new BMW as an example. Okay. It feels green. Oh my God, that thing's amazing. And it is. I was just in it yesterday. It's great. Not easy grabbing the Mazda after that. But the point is that it feels green, but our expenses are headed more red. Mm-hmm. And so it's this weird thing versus like, let's say we got rid of the BMW. We're not going to, but let's say we did get rid of it. It would feel red, but our expenses would head green.
Right.
And I think that that's a really important frame to think from is you might feel red headed green, meaning your future is very bright financially. And I have one person in particular, I tell this story. She was driving a Toyota and there was paint chipping off of it, even though she had hundreds of thousands of dollars in an investment account. And she's going to be a multimillionaire in the future, assuming things continue to progress. But she didn't feel great about her car versus this other client had 3 different cars, all beautiful, all $50,000 plus, but yet she's headed green, red. Mm. And so that's the last thing that I would say is how much influence are you leveraging in how much is coming in and how much is going out? Could you make a little bit more money if you were to work a little harder or add a little more value or ask for a raise? Or, you know, I had one friend who did DoorDash. I had one person who did Lyft. My barber was actually doing Lyft on the side. There's a lot of ways you can make some extra money, listen to books while in the car, right? There's a lot of ways. I had an ex-girlfriend who was doing dog walking for extra money.
You can make good money dog walking.
You can make very good money dog walking. One of my clients actually was opening a dog walking business. You can do very well. She was going to do like multiple dogs, mountain hikes. It's going to be like a whole thing. People will pay for their pets. One of my clients also is a pet store owner. Like, people love their fur babies. Mm-hmm, for sure. They will pay. You know the deal. Ultimate cat dad.
When we go to Belgium, we have to pay somebody. We'll pay somebody to watch the cats.
Yep.
You know, it's a very, very good business if you can get into it. Yeah, for sure.
100%. And it needs to be someone you trust because these are your babies. Mm-hmm. Emilia and I are going away this weekend. We're doing a day trip to her parents have a lake house. Beautiful. And we were going to go for the whole weekend, but Tucker and Tariel. So instead we're going to do a day trip. We're going to take Tucker. Tariel's good. She has her litter box. So, but anyways, the point that I'm making is, what was my original point? Oh, yeah. You can earn more in a bunch of different ways. Yeah. There's a lot of different ways to earn money. You just got to get creative. And you don't need to knock it out of the park. We're not saying earn an extra $1 million this year. That's not intelligent way to think, depending on what level you play at. And then the other piece, to Kevin's point, you have even more influence over is just canceling the stuff you don't need. Yeah. You can, every one of us, if we really had to, could save another $150 a month easily. I mean, I paid for McAfee or whatever. I think it's like $20 a month or something. Maybe even less. But I easily could cancel that. I don't know if it's doing anything. I just don't want a virus.
I think it is.
Yeah, it's probably doing something. But, and then to your point too, though, Kev, what these subscription services are doing now that I think is dangerous but also important. Dropbox, for example. I got rid of Dropbox because we standardized on Google Drive. There's no reason to have both. So consolidate. We do that a lot. But Dropbox lets you pay for a year for a cheaper price.
Yeah.
Disney Plus lets you pay for a year for a cheaper price. So you are locked in for the year because you pay up front. Right, so there's a lot you can do, but at the end of the day, the goal is to maximize how much you earn and to minimize how much you spend. And if you can do that consistently, and if you can do that, you'd be surprised what you are capable of. And the moment you have a goal that maybe you want to go on a trip or buy a home or buy a new car, there's ways to do it. You just got to mess with these two factors.
Hi, my name is Tim Melanson, and I have a web development agency called Creative Crew Agency, and I'm also a podcast host of the Work at Home Rockstar podcast. I met Alan a little over a year ago. He was a guest on my podcast, and we had an epic conversation, and I was just really impressed with his work ethic. And so I decided to jump on board with him, and it's been a little over a year now. My business has grown, but more importantly, I feel much less stressed and much more purposeful with what I'm doing and the direction that I'm going. So I definitely highly recommend Alan if you're looking for some accountability, if you're looking for some tools, and look him up, take him up on his consultation.
I think of it this way. One of the reasons why me buying the old car, and I just always use that example because I think a lot of the people I spent time with had that mentality at the time of, oh, I make more money now, I should spend more money. Here's the problem. I was only staying at a job for an average of probably a year or a year and a half. That's what I'm trying. So my recurring income was, I don't know, however long I'm at this job, then I'm going to figure something else out. That's why it was so challenging, because after a year I would say, this ain't it. And I go find something else, and I would have to make a certain amount of money or I'd be jeffed.
Mm-hmm.
Because the expenses are not going to go down when I go get another job. They don't care. The car still costs what it costs.
You trap yourself.
Yes. So last thing I'll say on this. I was talking to somebody recently, and we were talking about me buying a new car. And they said, the frame of the conversation was me trying to describe money so somebody would understand it better. Money in numbers, really. And I said, you have to understand, it wasn't about the $5,000 we put down. That was, we've had the $5,000 to put down. It was the monthly payment we were concerned about.
Mm-hmm.
The $5,000 is once. That $5,000 is gone. But now next month, there's another payment. And there's another payment. There's another payment. Another payment. That's what gave me the idea to do this episode is I didn't care about the $5,000. I cared about the X amount of dollars every single month that we must pay for the car now. Because
I think most people are thinking the opposite.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree.
I was on the phone. Sorry to interrupt you.
No,
I was on the phone with one of the team members, and it was fascinating for me a little bit. It was challenging to try to understand, but I do remember these days. We were talking about finance, and the most important number for most people is the amount in their bank account right now.
Mm.
The most important number in my mind is the snowball. I told you about this earlier. I see everyone as a snowball, and the snowball is either getting bigger or smaller. And the snowball is nothing more or not anything less than income and expenses. In other words, let's say someone makes, I don't know, $1,000 a week, $4,000 a month, and they spend $3,000 a month. Their snowball is getting bigger because they're netting $1,000 a month, right? Now imagine the opposite. Someone makes $3,000 a month and spends $4,000 a month. Their snowball is getting smaller. So I see snowballs everywhere. And not the least relevant, but one of the least relevant factors from my perspective in terms of importance is the amount of money in the bank account right now. That's actually the number that most people are looking at, it turns out. But that's not what matters. What matters is the monthly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you make
system.
that land?
Maybe if you're listening to this, you've heard the old saying that if we took all the money from everybody and we split, so you take all the money from the wealthy people, you take all the money from the poor people that, whatever money they have, and we just split it up and we give everybody the same exact amount of money. In theory, the next 10, 15, 20 years, the money is going to go to the people who already have the most because they just understand the system. They just understand how the money works. So what Alan, I think, is saying here is the amount of money you have in your bank account is great, but the amount of money that you have in your bank account is only as important as whether or not you're making money every month or losing money every month. If you have 100,000,
trajectory matters more than current state.
The green, yellow, red that we were talking about. Yep. If you have $10,000 in your bank account and the way you're living your life, you're losing $1,000 a month, you're only going to survive for 10 months.
Yep.
If you have $1,000 in your bank account, but every single month you net $1,000, you're good. You're going to be fine.
Yep.
You're going to have you'll have $13,000 by the end of the year.
Yep.
And that's a great place to be, right? And then, obviously investing that and talking about that's a different concept. But really, just the fundamental truth is when you are making decisions, think more from the frame of what does the recurring effect have more than the momentary effect. You could go buy, anybody who has $5,000 could go buy the same exact car I just bought. You could literally go down to the dealership and say, cool, I have the 5,000, and then you're good. You're good. Then when you get home, or you have to pay the first month when you're there, but the next month you might say, oh no, interesting. I didn't expect it. Like, it's already the 19th again. That came pretty quick.
More month at the end of the money.
Right. Yeah. And so that I have experienced this. I did this for many, many years. That's why I'm trying to make sure it lands, because I'm trying to say, okay, if I could talk to Kevin when he was doing the same thing, what would make it land for me? And it really is, it is that hopefully not, but our employment status changes more often than our recurring expenses if we're not careful and if we're not intentional. And I don't want you to end up trapped like I was. I had to work some not so great jobs that I didn't want to do, right? I didn't want to work overnights at a hospital, but I had to because that's all I could get at the time, and I had bills to pay. I had overextended myself financially, and I had to do what it took. So I really want to make sure this lands.
Well said.
I appreciate
Very
it.
last piece.
Yes.
So I don't want to add a ton more to this episode because I think this is a good nugget of wisdom. Golden nugget of wisdom. But there's one more tiny layer that I want to go down, which is to Kevin's point about if you put all the money and divide it up equally amongst all 8 billion people on the planet, eventually it would end up back in the same hands. Let me make this land in a better way than that, because I don't think that lands fully. If I were to wave a magic wand and add 50 pounds to Kevin, you'd be 230. You'd be 230. Kevin would eventually be right back, probably a year from now or 2 years from now, you'd be back at 180. And the reason why is because Kevin knows how to lose weight, and he's already on that trajectory. So you're not going to be overweight, Kev, not because you are inherently not overweight, but because you know how not to be. And I really hope that maybe that's another episode we do at some point. I think we're talking about awareness later this week. So I'll talk a little more about this coming up. But that's another piece of this, is like when you learn about money, you're going to end up with more of it because you know how it works. Just like Kevin knows fitness, so why would he be overweight? It's one of those, and I'm nothing against anyone who's overweight. The point is that you're not going to end up overweight, Kev, because you know how not to be, I think. And I think that's another frame that we should now translate that to money. If you take all Kevin's money right now, he's eventually going to have money again because he knows how to make money, and he knows how to minimize expenses, and he knows finance. So that's the last piece I'll add, which is learning about money is going to make you more successful. And I wonder if anyone ever really taught us that.
It's the system. It's really it's the system of how does it work. It's the system is far more important than the current. It just doesn't always feel like it.
Agreed. Definitely doesn't feel
always
like it.
Right. It doesn't always feel like it. It's completely understandable. It is completely understandable. That's why this jumping on the scale once a day is hard for a lot of us, because the numbers change. Sometimes they go up when they should go down, but they're actually going down. It just doesn't feel like it.
Yep.
It's just it's the long run over the short run.
Or in my case, it's going up when it's supposed to go down because I'm not eating properly.
Yes. Well, that means it's supposed to be going up.
Yeah, which is what it's doing.
Yeah, it's actually happening the way it's supposed to with you. June 1st? Is our meetup on June 1st?
Oh, yeah.
Where is it here?
First Thursday in June.
This is very appropriate for what we're talking about today. How to stick with something for the long run. The long run, a lot of us unfortunately become victims of, and we're not the ones who are controlling it. In my financial journey, that's exactly what happened. I stuck with things for the long run that I shouldn't. I stuck with destructive things, not necessarily constructive things. So join us on June 1st, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's private. It's behind the scenes. You do not have to take part. You don't have to have your camera on. You don't have to have your mic on. You can just be a fly on the wall. It's a great opportunity to meet other people. And if it's outside of your comfort zone, it's a good opportunity to fear chase as well.
Huge shout out to everyone who joined book club this past weekend. I don't know why, but we had a ton of people on book club this weekend. Yeah, more than usual. So keep it up. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate you. So we are reading a book called How Emotions Are Made. I'm holding it up if you're on YouTube. How Emotions Are Made by Lisa Feldman Barrett. It is blowing my mind. I cannot pretend that I spent decades studying emotional intelligence. I would say in my 30s, I started to realize the value of emotional intelligence, emotional maturity, emotional regulation. This kind of stuff is really new to me. And I love it, and it's awesome, and come with us. We are all talking about these concepts. You don't have to have read the book. If you have, that's great. If you haven't, you don't have to participate. You can keep your mic off. You can keep your camera off. You can just listen in. You're going to learn a lot. Or you can participate as much as you want. So join us. The link will be in the show notes to register.
Tomorrow for episode number 1347, you'll never feel like you deserve it until you do this. Alan and I had a conversation. Well, we have a lot of conversations about this, but we were having a conversation about self-worth and actually getting valued at the level you should, and how that's such a struggle for so many of us, especially our amazing community. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for every single one of you. And at NLU, we do not have fans. We have family. We will talk to you all tomorrow.
Keep doing those two things with your money. Next Level Nation.